Michael, what's happening now in American cities, Los Angeles, perhaps just the tip of the spear, is remarkable in so many different ways.
Yeah.
There are performative aspects to it, that is to say, the high profile way in which ICE agents go in to Home Depot, they go to Lowe's, they go to the fashion district and shake up these communities. They're going
Yeah.
to high school graduations. I mean, this is a level of insanity and aggression that most, I'd suggest, didn't vote for. Now, some may say, well, these people are here, they overstayed their visa, they're here illegally, or they came into the border undocumented. But it would seem that most, I'd say unquestionably, I mean, demonstrably the case, most that have been wrapped up and arrested, uh, they've been contributing members of society. Perhaps their legality in terms of being here is in question, but what they're doing while they're here, working in these various industries or working as day workers, that doesn't seem to be associated with any kind of criminal syndicate.
I'd agree with you. Where I disagree a little bit is I do think people voted for this in theory, and then when it comes into practice and they see how it's being executed, they probably wouldn't vote for it again. But there are a lot of people that think this is exactly what they voted for. Send them home, deport people who are here illegally. And it's insidious. And, it's not just anecdotal because it's happening all over the country, but I drove around Los Angeles where I happen to live for the moment, and drove last night looking for a taco stand, right? And there are these sort of impromptu taco stands that become part of the landscape of this city. And there were none anywhere last night. You couldn't find any. Today I drove by a paint store. I'm actually going to Home Depot. None of the workers, the day workers who are there, and these are people who have families. These are people who work hard. These are people who were leaving other places, presumably where things were terrible. And these are the people they're going after. They're not going after on the next block the people that are perpetrating crime, because I saw someone on that block who it was clearly last night a drug deal. I can't say for sure. And it's the priorities of this country and this immigration policy are absurd, right? They're just absurd. And they are reminiscent of fascist regimes and who they go after and how they do it. And I don't think that sits well with anybody.
So, and I would stipulate to the fact that that's probably true. That, I mean, as I said multiple times on this show, it's a net winner. Any conversation about immigration that we're having is a net winner politically for Donald Trump and for the GOP. But what's happening here is another level, as you say. So the questions that were wrestled with, and we did this in the first hour legally, about who controls the National Guard and whether or not the president is within his legal power to bring in the National Guard over the protestations of the governor and the mayor. We kind of addressed that legally, and it appears that there's enough wiggle room here that this actually may be perfectly legal. It may be abhorrent, it may be not what people want, but in terms of the legal high ground, that likely does exist for Trump. And by the time it gets to SCOTUS, what David Katz was saying in the legal analysis in the last hour, this will kind of be a moot point. So now we're left with just the effects on the community and the politics of California and how to deal with a regime in the Trump administration that seems bent on reforming California. You just saw Kristi Noem in the last hour I posted, and we watched the video of her saying, we're here and we're going to stay here to rescue Los Angeles from the socialist mayor and the socialist governor, et cetera, the slow socialist administration. Speak to the ripple effect politically and how this all might go down.
Well, it's hard to speak to the ripple effect politically, because we are 18 months away or 17 months away from the next election where you will see a political ripple effect. I do think that some of the, there's something surgical about the way this is being done by the Trump administration, because it's happening for the most part in blue states with blue governors and blue mayors who he doesn't like. So there's a lot of this is the is governance by vengeance, and it is going after someone like Gavin Newsom, someone like Karen Bass. He'll probably go after Katie Hobbs, who is the governor of Arizona. He already did it in J.B. Pritzker's state. You're seeing where I'm going with this. These are people that are opposed to President Trump and may run for president next time, or at least put their name in the hat. So there is something sort of political, not sort of, there's something very political about it. The ripple effect, though, is not one that we will be able to address until we're allowed to address it. And so right now the people in politics are trying to work on a budget, and a budget that should be something that everybody's talking about because of what that does, right? I mean, so there are all sorts of things that the Trump administration is doing right now, and that's what we've talked about very frequently in this space, is the chaos that's created by doing a lot at once and having it be very difficult for people to concentrate on one thing or the other. Last week, all anyone was talking about was Elon Musk. We don't talk about it right now, right? I mean, we've moved these news cycles happen so quickly. And then Israel kills people in Iran, so our attention is diverted there. So, and the U.S. response to that is going to be a very important and very kind of vital part of our foreign policy that is important. So to have this distraction of going into the streets of Los Angeles to pick up cleaning ladies and car wash employees is distraction and really vengeance too.
Yeah, there's a lot of distraction going on. You're right. Luis, they aren't going after real criminals, he says, because gangs and drug dealers have guns, while day laborers and hotel hospital staff have paintbrushes and mops. It is true. They're going for soft targets. They're not going after violent criminals.
I mean,
I'll put it this way: they're not. They're overwhelmingly picking up nonviolent criminals. Overwhelmingly, I mean, if they're
all they needed was the name of a couple of victims of violent crime, and that gives them license to go after everybody. Because what you have to understand is the people that did vote for this, and again, not enough people in America vote, but this is of the people who voted. This was a big issue, and the people who voted for this. Look at the people that they're picking up right now and think that among them there are all of these evildoers. It is impossible for there not to be any bad people that they're picking up, or any who are of a criminal element, because in any sample of humans in this country, that's what happens. But it is disproportionately less than to the people who are citizens here now. And we are using the name Laken Riley, for example, a victim of violent crime by an immigrant, to round up immigrants all over the country who are living peacefully here and who are not causing the problem. As a matter of fact, they're paying taxes into our government, which, if these bills are passed, is going to go even further into debt. So they help this country in many, many ways, obviously in more ways than they hurt it. And it's hard to know how they hurt it.
I want to turn now quickly to Iran and the attack on Iran by Israel. The attack was associated with the enrichment of uranium that's going on in Iran, and the perception on the part of the Israelis, and I think probably on the international community stage, it's the same perception, and that is that they are trying to attain a nuclear capability that would change the arithmetic in the Middle East dramatically. They're also trying to develop these missile systems, etc. So there was a treaty involved with the Obama administration and the Iranians that actually had a monitoring of that situation in Iran. And you seemed to see then a kind of quelling of at least hostilities between the U.S. and Iran during that Obama administration, to the degree that it was reflected in the putting together that and navigating that agreement. Anyway, Trump in season one, his first 4 years, he tears up that agreement right away, same day that he tore up the Paris Climate Accord. And anything with Obama, he wanted out.
Yeah.
He tried, though, to reconstitute it and has made multiple efforts to supposedly reconstitute a nuclear arms agreement. But to no avail, Israel goes in, and we don't know where those negotiations stood. I've heard every different kind of calculus on that. Well, we were close to a deal, and the Israelis were worried that we were going to make a deal, so they came in, they preemptively. I heard the whole deal was never even getting off the mat. It didn't look like anything was happening. And in the meantime, they were enriching uranium and they were fast pedaling their trip to nuclear armament. And that's why the Israelis moved in. Be that as it may, and whatever scenario you buy into, this is a sea change in what's going on in the Middle East, and it could be wildly destabilizing.
Well, of course it could be. And so there's so much at play here. Republicans let the perfect get in the way of the good with the nuclear agreement in Iran. It was not perfect. And you're never going to be able to trust the government completely in Iran that these inspections were taking place. But flawless shouldn't be the goal. Better should be the goal. And better was what it seemed as if there was. But it's easy to go after anything in the Obama administration, especially something that you're able to sell on the campaign trail is making deals with terrorists. And that, you have to say it worked, right? I mean, it worked for Trump in 2016. It wasn't an amplifying point in 2024 when he did win. In 2020, it wasn't really part of the election at all. But now you see these chickens come home to roost, and you see what's going on with Israel. Now, Israel has lost a lot of currency on the international front because of the war that's being waged in Gaza. So while they're very different, and Israel may have reason, I would argue that they do have reason to take action against Iran, even though it's destabilizing and dangerous. Iran sponsors a lot of the terrorism that comes across Israel's borders. But because of what's going on in Gaza, everybody thinks that Benjamin, I shouldn't say everybody, but many people think that Benjamin Netanyahu is a renegade on the loose all over the world. And that, to answer your question in what is now a very long way, is really what is destabilizing. And Netanyahu has destabilized that region over the last year with the response. There should have been a response, but the enduring response and the disproportionate response, in this guy's opinion, of what happened in Gaza. Now it's destabilized even further because you're inviting Iran, a powerful and nuclear nation, into the conversation.
I'll just note that one of the reasons that the Israelis went for Iran at this time, in addition to whatever nuclear capabilities they were on the verge of capturing, the Israelis went there because the Iranians have been diminished militarily as a result of their recent back and forth with Israel. You remember they launched all those missiles into Israel, and
Right.
there were retaliatory strikes. Those diminished, for example, their air capacity and militarily, I'm talking about. So they, if you will, see a weakened Iran and an opportunity right now to strike. And that's why they struck right now. At least that's, I think, a reasonable take on things. You know, Michael, I wanted to just do one thing because I think it reflects this administration. I think this administration is made up of rank amateurs, most of whom are just saluting this guy who's allowed them access to Washington, power, the presidency, etc. Some are there for self-enrichment. Some are there just for the power trip. Some for some mix of both. I don't view any of them particularly as sincere public servants, but maybe I'm wrong about some percentage of them. But I do know when it comes to Iran and when it comes to Russia and when it comes to diplomacy, we have rank amateurs who are there. The reason that, and these are my opinions, not Michael Schor's, but I can say full-throatedly that these are people with absolutely no background in diplomacy, no background in geopolitics. The guy who is running the Iran negotiation for the U.S. is a real estate developer. That's what he has done all his life, real estate development. He is a golfing buddy of Donald Trump. Witkoff. Look him up, Google him, read about him in Wikipedia.
Google it.
He has absolutely no background in diplomacy, no background in geopolitics. That's who's handling a situation that has now spilled over into an armed conflict.
Yeah.
It's not fun. This isn't a TV show. I understand Trump wants to cast the good-looking service people around him when he speaks. We're going to have a big show tomorrow in Washington for his birthday with the military. That's all stuff. He's using the National Guard and the Marines as props. It's a play presidency, a theatrical presidency. But It's real world. And you have
Right.
absolute amateurs working in on stage who've never been there before.
I would agree. I mean, that part I'd agree with. And there isn't a respect for the existing structures of government and negotiation that comes from the top down in this administration or the previous Trump administration, which makes a big difference, right? I mean, when Obama was there, I believe it was Wendy Sherman and Rob Malley. Rob Malley had his own problems. John Kerry, his vice president was Joe Biden, who at that time had spent a lot of time as the chair of the Foreign Services Committee and the Foreign Affairs Committee in the Senate, had a very whatever criticism you have of the former president, when he was in the Senate, he had a breadth of knowledge and familiarity with those areas. And he was advising the president at that time, too, on the JCPOA, which was the Iran nuclear treaty. So, yeah, when you have people over there doing this who shouldn't be a real estate, you should have boring people whose names you don't know running this thing, and if it's a boring person whose name you don't know, who is part of the foreign who has State Department, who has Foreign Service and Secretary of State Department experience over there, it's super important, and it makes a big difference. And this has nothing to do with whether or not Israel was in the right or the wrong, or what it does to destabilize that area. But it certainly does speak to the fact that you aren't getting the leadership that's required, whatever the case. And that's a terrible place for the country to be in. Not to mention, this is a president who ran by saying that all the wars were because of Biden and he'll end them all in a day or so, right? And things have, I would argue, gotten worse.
It seems so, demonstrably BS.
Yeah.
Such a clunky con was the Trump con. So again, he just puts people in who are all just loyalists. They are amateurs. They have no allegiance to anything but Trump. We saw that with the Pete Hegseth back and forth. Pete
Right.
Hegseth saying that he, in a congressional hearing, he said he wouldn't necessarily respect a judge's take on the powers of the U.S. military.
Yeah.
I mean, he's saying what we know, which is we have control now, and we are not going to be limited by a judge's order.
Yeah.
I looked up, Albert pushed me Witkoff. Thank you, Albert, just from Wikipedia. This is the guy who's handling all of this diplomatic stuff.
Right.
Began his career as a real estate lawyer. Then he went on to form Stellar Management, which is a real estate firm. Then he formed the Witkoff Group. Is that some diplomatic? No, it's a real estate group. He was CEO of this Witkoff Group, headquartered in New York City, got to know Donald Trump. They purchased the Park Lane Hotel on Central Park South in Manhattan. Witkoff Group purchased the Fontainebleau Hotel in Las Vegas for $600 million. Again, close to Trump, billionaire guy. And then in 2020, during the first presidency of Donald Trump, he was working with the economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic in the U.S. Then he gave a speech on night 4 of the Republican National Convention in 2024. And lo and behold, he is chosen to be co-chair of the Presidential Inaugural Committee for the second presidency. And then he's appointed U.S. Special Envoy to the Middle East. He has this is not me saying this, it's in Wikipedia. Witkoff has no diplomatic experience.
And it should be noted, and I'm not just saying this to add on to pile on, but his son Zach Witkoff is the head of World Liberty Financial, and World Liberty Financial is a cryptocurrency company that was founded last year in 2024, and now you'll be surprised to know, through its connections to Donald Trump, it's going to be the one that launches USD1, which is that the what do you call it, the dollar pegged stable coin that's going to be out and has the connections to the administration. So highly controversial for its Chinese connections as well. And so they spin these webs all because this is another part another person in Trump world, and that's all that matters is loyalty, because loyalty gets you access.
Exactly. And what Mike was talking about is the self-enrichment of this administration. Witkoff's son owns that
World Liberty Financial.
World Liberty Financial with the Trumps. Yeah,
Yeah.
as you say. And so they all make money every time anybody buys anything on that platform. And most of all, when they buy the meme coin, the Trump meme coin purchased on that platform, that makes everybody rich on all sides.
Yeah.
They're double dipping. And I'm glad we could just talk about that for a second, because to the extent that there can be any kind of negotiated settlement or maneuver through all of this, it's in the hands of a real estate developer. He doesn't know that,
Right. As opposed to the Iran nuclear deal previously was in the hands of Wendy Sherman, right? Wendy Sherman was someone who worked for President Clinton at the State Department, worked for Hillary Clinton, worked for with John Kerry. She worked with Madeleine Albright. She negotiated the North Korean peace agreement, or the nuclear weapons agreement there. That is who you send to do these things. You don't send a real estate guy from the Upper East Side.
Right. As someone who doesn't
And
know
there's nothing wrong with real estate people on the Upper East Side.
Sure. And there's nothing wrong with being rich. We all want to make money in this culture, but it's sort of set up that way. But if you don't know the Sunnis from the Shiites, you're going to be, it's going to be tough sledding.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.